Today we come to the first real parable in the Gospel of John, and we're like, yay! We love stories. And honestly, it's been a little difficult slogging along through some of these more complicated sermons that Jesus has been giving. So it's a breath of fresh air. We're excited to dive into a story. This particular story is about sheep and their shepherd. But it's not as calm and pastoral as you might first imagine. There are dangers at every turn for these sheep. It's kind of like the movie The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy is wandering around going, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. In Jesus' story, there are thieves and strangers and wolves everywhere in the story. Everywhere there's the people of God. Everywhere there's the flock of God, his people. Jesus tells us that there will be those who seek to plunder and scatter and to destroy God's sheep. It's kind of a scary beginning to what we thought was going to be a gentle story. But Jesus goes on to tell us that there is a shepherd who's watching over us. He is standing guard. He's sleeping across the entrance to the sheepfold. When Jesus explained the meaning of this parable to his disciples, we expected him to identify himself with the shepherd. That would make sense. But that's not what Jesus did the first time he explained this parable. He identified himself with the gate. Gosh, we didn't see that coming. We could not have connected those dots if Jesus hadn't put that piece of the picture together. Some commentators tell us that first century shepherds, Palestinian shepherds, were known to sometimes sleep across the entrance to the sheep pen so that no sheep could get out and no predator could get in without having to go through the shepherd first. The shepherd was always on guard, even while he was sleeping. The real hero in the story that Jesus tells us is the shepherd. Although there was danger at every turn, the sheep were never at risk because the shepherd was watching over them. When the shepherd would arrive at the sheep pen, the sheep would hear his voice and it would comfort them. It would soothe them. It settled them down because sheep are skittish unless the shepherd is there. I'm guessing they're skittish because they're really pretty defenseless. When Cynthia and I were hiking on the island of Iona this summer in Scotland, we were constantly hiking through herds of sheep, and it was so much fun. They look so cuddly, you just want to run up and give them a hug. Cynthia tried it. She couldn't resist. But the sheep would have none of it. Every time they saw her coming, they would run away. It was so disappointing because there was so much woolly goodness, but no opportunity to give it a squeeze. I'm guessing that sheep are skittish because they have no natural means of protecting themselves. All they can do is run away. And they don't do that very well either. They kind of trot as they scatter from one another. I'm guessing they are living on that age-old adage, I don't have to be fastest, I just have to be faster than you to stay safe. So sheep are always on their guard. They're always keeping one eye out for danger. They're never really resting. Their shoulders never really relax. They can't give themselves over to a good graze in knee-high grass because danger lurks everywhere for them. You might feel that way right now as well. The news seems scarier every day. One day we're told that the coronavirus is 10 times more contagious than the flu. And the next day we're told that the stock market has sunk even lower. We don't want to watch the news because it scares us. But if you're like me, you cannot not watch the news because you're afraid of what you don't know. So we're like sheep. We skitter about, bouncing between obsessing on the news or counting our rolls of toilet paper. You may be finding it hard to really relax, to let your guard down, to relax into a good meal, or to fully enjoy an intimate conversation, or to give yourselves over to the company of family, or to dive into a good book. I bet you're finding it hard to settle into praying because we're so worried about what will come next. The sheep in Jesus' story can't get out of that danger, danger, Will Robinson mode until they hear the shepherd's voice. Then they say, oh, it's him. They recognize his voice, and immediately something inside of them exhales and goes, safe at last. He's here. He'll watch over us. We can rest. By speaking this parable over anxious sheep like us, Jesus is asking us to see him this way. He is auditioning for the role of shepherd in our lives. I don't believe there's ever been a more loved passage of Scripture than the 23rd Psalm. What do you think? I mean, who among us, when we hear the first words, the Lord is my shepherd, cannot intuitively from somewhere way in the back of our minds complete the next line? I shall not want. Who of us doesn't immediately feel something inside of them go, that's right, whenever we hear those opening words, the Lord is my shepherd, I'm not on my own. I can relax. So I think it was pretty bold of Jesus to pick up this beloved psalm and insert himself in our imagination as we're picturing God as our shepherd. And Jesus saying, I am that good shepherd. That could not have been lost on the crowds in Jesus' day. Jesus was equating himself with God. And Jesus, as God, was once again offering to be our shepherd. It's no wonder that this parable stirred such deep division among those who heard it. Those who heard it and understood that Jesus was claiming to be God, some of them said he's a madman to make that claim. But others said, who could open the eyes of the blind if God wasn't with him? And they seemed to want to know the shepherd who'd been shepherding them all their lives. It was a really big deal for Jesus to assert that he is our good shepherd. He was claiming to be God and offering to shepherd us again. As Jesus auditioned to become our shepherd, he made two promises about himself as shepherd. He claimed, first of all, that he would call us by name. Shepherds spend a lot of time with their sheep. It's a 24-hour-a-day, 365 days a year gig. Even today, when shepherds take their sheep out to the remote pastures, they don't come back again until it's shearing time. So shepherds get to know their sheep, all their idiosyncrasies, the things that make them unique. Shepherds gave their sheep pet names based on how they acted. You know, like the dwarfs in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. They're sleepy and dopey and grumpy and sneezy. There was probably a sheep that was called Scout in every herd because she was always getting out ahead of the rest of the herd. There's probably always one that's nicknamed Scaredy Cat because it's so timid and quakes whenever it's outside of the sheep pen. I have a friend who, in his retirement, started farming for the first time, and he really didn't know what he was doing. It's kind of like the TV show Green Acres. He was telling me about the one steer he owns and how it is constantly breaking out of the fences that were meant to hold it in. He laughed at himself and said, you know, I probably should have known that'd be the case because when I bought him, the previous owners had nicknamed him Houdini. Jesus, our shepherd, knows us well. He has pet names for each of us. Names that accurately but lovingly describe how we try to manage life. So, what might Jesus' pet name be for you? If he is to give you a nickname based upon how you respond to life, what is his loving nickname for you? Well, no matter how foolish or fearful or daring or stupid we might be, Jesus loves us for who we are, and he promises to protect us even from ourselves, because he is our good shepherd who calls us by name. Second promise that Jesus made as shepherd was that he would lead the way. He leads us out of the sheepfold, and then he goes before us as he guides us through the dangers of life. The shepherd knows where the good pastures are. The shepherd knows the dangers that are to be avoided. He is at the helm. He's running point. He has our well-being in mind. That is his foremost concern. He won't let us down. What are the dangers that you picture right now that are on the horizon? The dangers that are just out of the sheepfold, the dangers that cause you to want to stay close at home and be afraid of tomorrow. Can you bring one of those fears to mind? As you hold that fear in your mind, picture Jesus calling you by his pet name for you. Picture the comfort that comes over you as you hear Jesus call your name, and as you know that he's near, he's with you in the sheep pen. Now imagine Jesus getting ready to open the gate in order to lead you out. And watch him as he goes out before you. Because come what may, he's going to keep you safe. He is your good shepherd. Now sit for a moment in the quiet assurance that this is what Jesus wants to do for you. Jesus, your shepherd. There are going to be moments in these days ahead when we feel anxious, when we say lions and tigers and bears, oh my, where dangers seem to lurk on every horizon no matter where we look. Whenever that happens, go back to the story and recite that age-old confession of faith. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Keep repeating it, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, until the truth of that settles you down again and reminds you who you are and whose you are. The Lord will go with us. We are not on our own. Thanks be to God.